So ladies and gentlemen, another big round of applause for Professor Chan Heng Chee, please.
Good morning to all of you. First of all, let me say that I am here to read the keynote address or to deliver the keynote address of Professor Tommy Koh. That's what my role is. So I'm channeling Tommy Koh. I'm not responsible for what he's saying. So on behalf of Tommy, you're hearing me. I'm not going to change your words. Mr. Wee Cheong, ladies and gentlemen, will 2025 be a happy or unhappy year? That is a question which I will try to answer. I will make 5 predictions about 2025. This is Tommy, yeah? My predictions would be more accurate if this forum were held after the 20th of January. On that day, Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 47th President of the United States. Remember this about President Trump. He is not a traditional Republican. He is a radical populist whose ambition is to remake America. Let me give you one example. A traditional Republican is pro-trade, pro-free trade. Trump is against free trade and champions protectionism. I recommend a new book by Nirmal Ghosh, the former bureau chief of the Straits Times in Washington. The title of the book is Backlash, Trump and the Remaking of America. Tommy says, I am launching the book for the author this afternoon. Not anymore. So let me begin with his predictions. The question which keeps me awake at night is the danger of war between the United States and China. One of the good things we can say about President Trump is that he is against wars. It was he who ended the war against the Taliban in Afghanistan. Overruling his generals, he decided to negotiate with the Taliban for the safe withdrawal of US troops from that country. I can therefore predict with some confidence that there will be no war between the United States and China in 2025. My second prediction is an unhappy one. If President Trump carries out all or some of his campaign promises on trade, the consequences will be bad for the world trading system. To recollect, Trump threatened to impose 60% tariff on Chinese imports. He has also threatened to impose 25% tariff on Canadian and Mexican imports unless Canada stops the influx of illegal immigrants and Mexico stops the influx of both illegal immigrants and the drug fentanyl. Singapore is worried by President Trump's threat to impose an universal tariff on imports of between 10 to 20%. Such a tariff will hurt our economy and our exports to America. If such a tariff were imposed, Singapore will ask for an exemption on 3 grounds. First, we have an FTA with America, and fortunately for Singapore, the US enjoys a trade surplus with Singapore. Second, we allow the US Air Force and Navy to use our facilities for free. Third, we hosted the first Trump-Kim summit in Singapore. President Trump has often said that tariff is his favorite word in the English language. He has also said that trade wars are easy to win. I don't know whether he is aware of the history of tariff wars in the 1930s and how they managed to prolong the Great Depression. In 1930, two Republican members of the US Congress, Mr. Reed Smoot and Mr. Willis Hawley, co-sponsored a bill to increase tariffs on over 20,000 agricultural and industrial imports. Over 1,000 US economists co-signed a letter to President Herbert Hoover, urging him to veto the bill. Ignoring their advice, the president signed it into law. Other countries responded by imposing tariffs on US imports. The trade war did no one any good and deepened the Great Depression. My third prediction is about China. Many of my American and European friends hold the view that China has entered a new era of slow growth. They believe that China will be unable to bounce back from its present difficulties. I don't agree with my American and European friends. I don't think the Chinese economic miracle is over. It will take some time for China to restore the real estate sector to health. I believe the Chinese economy will bounce back, powered by electric vehicles, clean and renewable energy, and artificial intelligence. I expect China to grow at between 4 and 5% in 2025. My fourth prediction is about ASEAN. ASEAN is a bright spot in a darkening world. It has kept the peace in the region for many years. It has integrated the 10 economies into a single economy. It is a force for peace in the Asia-Pacific and Indo-Pacific region. The ASEAN economy is growing at between 4 and 5% annually. At the moment, the ASEAN economy is the 5th largest in the world. My prediction is that it will overtake Germany and become the 4th largest by 2030. My final prediction is an unhappy one, the 5th. I predict that President Trump will withdraw for the second time from the Paris Agreement on climate change. He thinks climate change is a hoax. He does not believe in clean and renewable energy and will support the fossil fuels industries. He is against subsidizing electric vehicles. The US is the second largest emitter of greenhouse gases after China. The US plays an important but not indispensable role in our campaign against climate change and global warming. The withdrawal of the US is a blow, but it is not fatal. The rest of the world will carry on. The Americans like to call themselves the indispensable power. On climate change, the United States is important, but not indispensable. I shall conclude. 3 of my 5 predictions are positive ones. So on balance, I think I can wish you a Happy New Year. Thank you. Now, that was Tommy. Since I have the podium, let me add some supplementary points and a couple of accents. First, I would like to say, reflecting others, that we should expect 2025 to be a rocky year. It will be unpredictable. And I am not saying this as a normal, easy conclusion or expression that analysts use to conclude their speech. This year, it is particularly so because we have Donald J. Trump, who will be inaugurated as the 47th President of the United States in 6 days. With the US, what the US does or does not do matters to the whole world. It is the largest and most powerful economy in the world. It has the most powerful military in the world. And Mr. Trump himself values being unpredictable and sowing confusion. It is his negotiating tactic, and he has used this tool to his advantage. Elon Musk is there to amplify this confusion. We have seen President-elect Trump creating waves with his statements about Panama Canal, Greenland, Canada, and the renaming of the Gulf of Mexico to be the Gulf of America. So how to deal with this? Keep calm and see what comes next. In fact, Asia is reasonably calm. If you go around, we are very different from Europe. I think Europe has been expressively anxious. We are like ducks. You know, above the water, we look very calm. But beneath the water, we are paddling like mad. But we are keeping calm because many of the leaderships say they have seen Trump 1.0 before. And Trump 1.0, according to these leaders, turned out better than everyone thought. Liberal Americans and Europeans think 2.0 will be much different and could be worse. The second point I want to make is, on war, I agree with Professor Koh. Americans who are in the political circles in Washington say Donald Trump is not a man of war. This is the one good thing about him. And apart from stopping the war, ending the war in Afghanistan, he took the first step. Joe Biden continued with it. His NSC advisor for the first Trump administration, Robert O'Brien, wrote an important article on Trump's foreign policy in Foreign Affairs, a very important international and American foreign policy journal. O'Brien proudly wrote that President Trump, in his first administration, did not start a single war in the 4 years. He did not start a single war. He just dealt with the wars he had or tried to end the wars. My concern on the war issue, however, is that, for instance, on Taiwan, President Trump may be focused on other issues, and it is his team at the lower levels who will handle the cross-strait issue. By the time President Trump turns back to Taiwan again, his options may be somewhat laid out for him or narrowed. So that is my concern. For the third point, I will highlight some positives so that you may want to reflect on this when thinking of President Trump and how he will impact on all of us. This is President Trump's second term, and he is much more prepared. He would have thought out about what he wants to accomplish, and he has taken some time he's had some time to think about who he wants to appoint to his team. In fact, you would have noticed he rolled out the names very fast. But President Trump has said, this time around, he said, everyone and all the countries are very friendly towards him. They are courting him. He said when he was elected the first time, they were pushing against him and were fighting him. He is much less an outsider now. I saw on Forbes, not Fox, Forbes breaking news, that President Trump said, everyone is coming, all the CEOs, and you could see Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Mike Zuckerberg, and so on. He said, everyone is coming, and bankers. He said, I have not heard anyone say bad things about me. I'm not used to that. And he further said, maybe they've changed, and maybe I have changed. Maybe we have all changed. But I think it is clear President Trump is more confident and calm. In fact, Jeff Bezos said that in one of his interviews. He's seen a more calm and confident Donald Trump. I think this may impact on his decisions. So that's the good news I have for you. On the other issues, I think we're going to have a forum to discuss that. Thank you. Is this mine? Yeah. Apparently my scarf rubs against this microphone. Hold it.
Okay.
Oh la la.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so we are now in the Fireside Chat proper. Just a quick housekeeping rule before we start. The QR code is behind your name tag, so please punch in only intelligent and witty questions. Right? They will show up on my iPad. I will sift through them. Anything interesting, I will basically point to Prof. Chan. But I have a few stock questions to start the conversation. And no surprises, they are all about trade tariffs, right? I think we will all agree with all of the points that Prof. Ko has made, right? And I think the singular most important concern of all of us, of all business leaders in this room, is trade tariffs. If I can, simplify, compress anything, that's the be-all, end-all of geopolitics, of economy, of financial markets this year and possibly the next few years. Prof. Ko, we have discussed about this before. So the worry about investors is there's a lot of escalating threats from President Trump, but his team that he has been setting up seems to be professionals, at least from us analysts' point of view. Howard Lutnick, right, Scott Bessant, they know financial markets. They are operators of financial markets. So do you think there is enough checks and balance from his team to put in a much more, how should I say, methodical, if that's the right word, trade tariff framework instead of an escalating, difficult, intense version?
Well, first of all, I think tariffs will go up, all right? Some have asked, is the 60% a negotiating tactic? Yes, it could be some negotiating tactic. In the first round, first term, President Trump threatened 25% tariffs on China. In some areas, he went up to 30%, I think on solar panels, Some were 25%, some were 10%. Overall, some American institutions calculate that it came up to about, if you look at it overall, it's 21.9%, 20%, you know. So it didn't quite reach 25%. So 60% could be a start, and it could be a bit lower, it could be a bit higher. So you never know. But the thing is that tariffs will go up. Mm-hmm. You are correct in emphasizing that the markets have welcomed the moderate economic team. Yep. Scott Bessent, Kevin Hassett, who is the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, Secretary of Commerce is Howard Lutnick, and he's kept Jerome Powell as a Federal Reserve Chair. And the name he's thrown out as a possible successor in 2026 is Kevin Walsh. All of these are from Wall Street. Wall Street is comfortable with them. Kevin Bassett is from a think tank. But, and they understand international markets, they understand inflation. So that could be some check. But I think President Trump also uses tariffs as a negotiating tactic. He's, said 25% on Mexico, 25% on Justin Trudeau. And what did he get? Sheinbaum, Mexico's president, pushed back, but she agreed to control immigration. He got what he wanted, and somewhat fentanyl. He got Justin Trudeau out, But, and Justin Trudeau went down to Mar-a-Lago to talk to him. So it's a negotiating tactic, but I think in the first term, he weaponized tariffs. So I can see him using tariffs as a bargaining weapon too, And here I would say that free trade agreements are not foolproof. They are not shields.
Oh, okay.
We have a free trade agreement, but there's a provision in the FTA, everyone's FTA, which allows the U.S. to waive, aside you can bring in tariffs, you can waive, you have a waiver to push aside the agreement if it is a matter of national security. And now, today, everything is national security. It's got such a wide definition. Mm-hmm. So it is not, it's not foolproof, having the FTA. Other factors may come in, and Prof. Koh is right to say that we host we provide facilities, we don't charge America for this, and we're generally seen to be a friendly country, we do things right. So I think it's these factors you may look at, and frankly, I think Singapore is collateral damage. The tariffs are not targeted at us. Many countries in the region will just be collateral damage. We may have the universal 10 to 20% tariffs that are just imposed. Of course, for us, the whole economic environment would really be not a happy one, and so that will impact on our economy. So we are rightly concerned.
Thank you, Prof. Chan. I think you mentioned about Singapore being collateral damage and the region. One of the other concerns, I think a lot of questions that we get is basically, everybody's prepared for tariffs against China, against Canada, against Mexico. But I think the region is Europe as well. But I think the region is not so sure about how the tariffs, in what form, will come against ASEAN, right? The universal tariffs. In our research team's analysis, we can see very clearly the implications of China +1. A lot of Chinese exports have made it into ASEAN, and we have repackaged it and shifted it out to the United States. I'm sure Trump can see it as well. Questions have been asked, what about ASEAN, Vietnam in particular, who has had a big jump in trade surplus? Will we all get hit with universal tariffs?
The tariffs will not be on ASEAN, it will be on countries, all right? In that sense, we worry. Actually, the fact that ASEAN benefited from the diversion of the supply chains. Factories moved out of China, whether they're Chinese factories or Western factories or Japanese factories, and went to Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, and so on, some to Singapore, would in fact attract attention because I think it was seen in the United States as avoiding the sanctions, avoiding the tariffs. President Biden was going to fix this and tax these countries in Southeast Asia. What more, President Trump? President Biden didn't get to do it, all right? Now, what about Vietnam? The one thing about Vietnam is To Lam had a very good call, apparently, with President-elect Trump. It went longer than they expected. And, hello? Yeah. And I think President Trump likes Vietnam. That's one thing. He's been to Vietnam twice in his first term. He's built a golf course in Vietnam in President To Lam's, Secretary General To Lam's province.
Okay.
And Elon Musk is interested in SpaceX internet services there. But I think Vietnam is seen to be a country that could be used to balance a little China. So I do not think there will be tariffs, but I think it could be negotiated. How much?
Okay, so maybe going forward, it's no longer ping-pong diplomacy, but golf course diplomacy.
But it must make money. Now, I want to make one other point about tariffs and ASEAN. In fact, ASEAN countries have been preparing for this for a while. I wouldn't say it's Trump-proofing because it's not complete. But ASEAN countries, the economies, have individually been signing more free trade agreements with Global South to diversify their trade. So they are not totally dependent on the US market. We found this with Thailand, with Malaysia, even Cambodia was signing these free trade agreements, and Philippines. So I think ASEAN is looking for other ways. And Singapore signed with Mercosur, we signed with Turkey. So no one is just sitting still there. We're trying to diversify, increase the markets. We talked about it, but now everyone is serious about looking for new markets.
So I want to emphasize one point that Prof. Chan has said. Now, everybody's worried about the negative buzzword is deglobalization, right? But the other half of it is there's a lot of regionalization of trade. Multipolarity to me is not a negative word because as Prof. Chan has said, every country is trying to send out its feelers, tentacles, if you may, to have that spoke of multiple trade agreements to build regional trade with as much the region across the world as possible. So in fact, one of the data that is showing is that we are getting more and more intra-regional trade, right? Regions have formed up, and I think that's a good thing, especially for ASEAN as well. Moving on to China. China is the other big elephant in the room. Every discussion, we need to talk about how China's economy is doing. I think Prof. Koh has said that the Chinese economic miracle is not over. I would, nuance it a little bit. For us, analysts, when we look at the macro data, it is still very difficult. There is still no consistent, strong recovery in retail sentiment, in domestic investment. The property market is still going through a lot of pain. So, Prof. Chan, can you share with us, your understanding of Chinese economy? How do you think the recovery will take shape?
Let me begin by saying I'm not an economist, but I talk to a lot of economists, Singapore ones, Chinese, and Western economists, American economists, European economists. One basic fact to remember is China is vast, 1.4 billion people. sooner or later it will recover. And it's cyclical economies, so it will come out. So what is your time frame? You are saying that you don't see the recovery. Is it a 2-year time frame, 1-year time frame, 5-year time frame, 8-year time frame? I think it's a question of when and what is your staying power and what industry you are in. I am positive in this sense because of the base of China. Now, I've heard this from World Bank economists, Chinese economists. They say the days of 8% growth in China are over. You're really realistically looking at 3 to 4% growth in China from now on, because it's a totally different size of an economy. And 3 to 4%, according to World Bank economists who was here heading EAI, Bert Hoffman, he said this on a program in China. He said 3 to 4% is not the best it can be, but it's okay. China will, move along, muddle along, and for such a big country, sure, it will grow. So one thinks like this. He said 3 to 4%. The Chinese economist from Beida said 5%. Okay, so there's variation. So we're not looking at 8%, we're looking at a lower percentage of growth.
For the record, UOB cost 4.3 this year.
Okay, very good. So I think that's where it is. I read that 2nd tier, 3rd tier, 4th tier, 5th tier cities in China see some growth, and growth in different areas, and the population is moving out of Beijing to go to these cities, Shanghai, all your tier 1 cities. We get all these terrible reports because most of us read the English reports. Economists, New York Times, Financial Times, all their writers huddle around the capital cities. So you just look at, the tech talent, which is hurt there, the financial talent in the banks, and they all say life is terrible, terrible, terrible. They don't see a future. Some move out. But if you go to 2nd, 3rd, 4th tier cities, the economy is changing, And if you say China is doing so badly, hey, EV is doing quite well, and the AI is moving up, robotics and so on. So there's still areas that are shining and which America sees as very competitive.
Indeed.
Yeah? So these are some factors to bear in mind in the case of China. Now, I would also say the Chinese have now brought in stimulus. All of you have been watching it. You say it's not enough. Of course, this too, that people expect that China is holding back the Big Bang because they want to see what the United States will bring on in the Trump administration. So you haven't seen it. But I think China's problem is confidence. They have to build back trust. And confidence is not going to take over in 1 year. It's got to be consistently over 2, 3 years, 4 years maybe.
Yes.
And people have to feel that there's a lot of money locked up. They must want to spend. That. It's locked up in your banks too, But the thing is that they must feel that there is social welfare there, all these measures are there so that they can, in fact, spend with greater comfort. And I think China has to make it clear, is it security or growth they are emphasizing? I think it's still a little bit more security, although I see growth is emphasized. And policies, I know it's a big country, sometimes it tends to contradict one agency and another. If you want to build confidence, you cannot be pulling in, and you want FDI, you cannot be pulling in foreign executives to question them. And there needs to be greater transparency. If you say, I just want him for questioning, say it. Release them after that, And also, China has to win back the confidence of the tech sector, the tech giants. And this, they have to do it still yet. So there are all these factors about China. But let me tell you one piece of news which surprised me. Last year, around F1, one of the big European MNC CEO, I won't say its name, said to me he was doubling down on China and doubling down on Hong Kong. And that was before the stimulus packages were announced. So he said, it really depends on your sector. Okay? So there are some shoots, small shoots, but you are right, it's still not moving fast and some will say not moving at all.
So I do agree with Prof. Chan. I think we all need to give the Chinese a little bit of breathing space for the stimulus to work out. And we all know that, the Chinese or Chinese society are strong savers, right? There is a lot of savings, whether it's individuals or corporates on the balance sheet. The question is, once the confidence level, the sentiment recovers, all this will be then put into good, productive use. I mean, our numbers show that about 3/4 of the household wealth is stuck in the property sector. So once that clears, you can imagine the amount of liquidity that will be unleashed eventually in the next few years. So I guess patience is the operative word for China's economy to gradually stabilize and recover, and then the rest of ASEAN can benefit from that. I have a few.
They have a problem of youth unemployment, the graduates, and that is one of the issues.
Indeed.
I understand China has just allowed private tuition websites to go up again, because when I saw that they closed it, I said, oh my goodness, you've closed out a very major source of jobs. It's self-employed, and you can run you give private tuition, and I understand that some people could make $1 million yuan a year, so it was good money. So I think the youth unemployment is an issue which they have to sort out.
Maybe that's a new area of growth for China, on top of EVs, right? One last question on China. Again, this is related to Mr. Trump as well, President Trump. There's a lot of whispers that he wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize, that eventually he wants his Roosevelt moment. Do you think there's ever a grand bargain, if possible, between Mr. Trump and President Xi Jinping for the betterment of the world? Perhaps there'll be a deal that US will not tariff China, and then China will encourage Russia to move out of Ukraine. Is that possible?
There's a lot being written about and talked about on the personal relationship between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. What has been noticed is that President-elect Trump, candidate Trump, has spoken of President Xi Jinping in a very positive way. He says he's my friend, he's a good man, great man, And President Xi Jinping, I don't know if many of you know this, when Donald Trump there was an assassination attempt on him, the second time when blood came out and he was on the stage, Xi Jinping wrote a letter to Donald Trump, wishing him a speedy recovery, wishing him well. And Donald Trump mentioned this on his campaign trail, so he noted that. So he says, we have a good relationship. In fact, on one of his stump speeches, he said, we have a very good relationship and so on. Too bad it soured when the Wuhan virus came. So that was what happened. But he has also said recently, China and the United States, if they get together, can solve all the problems of the world. So this is on the side of President Trump, and Americans tell me, he can do the surprising thing. He will be a credible second Nixon to China, because he's got such strong credentials. If he decides to do a bargain, or not bargain, but he decides to open up to China, the pushback may be a little less. So there's that personal relationship. And President Xi Jinping has done two things. China has indicated, President Xi, Wang Yi, and so on, that China is prepared to have a good relationship with the United States, but President Xi Jinping also showed we're prepared to be tough. And he laid down his 4 lines, red lines. And where he did this to Biden, said it to Biden, but he meant it for President Trump. And he invoked the critical, he sort of stopped export of 2 critical materials during President Biden's time, all right? So, what China is showing, I guess, is we can be friends, but if you play tough, I can play tough, Now, this is both sides. We must not forget there are structural reasons. This is personal at the leaders' level, but politics has to do with structure and forces too. And in America today, the structure is that everyone is looking at it, and Chinese too. You have 2 powers that are fighting for influence and dominance. Who will win? It's a structural problem, head to head. And President Trump, I think even as he wants a good relationship with China, he wants America first. He wants to be number 1. And that may entail putting tariffs, slapping, so on. So there's a limit, I think, to this personal relationship. And Congress took a bipartisan position. They're very hostile to China and the think tanks and so on. So we should look at that aspect too, not just the personal aspects. So I would say I don't see a grand bargain, but there could be some stabilization, periodic. But, the first term of President Trump, he did very well, because Trump got his grandchild to sing Chinese songs. Yes. Then he went to Forbidden City, and before you know it, the trade tariffs came in. That was okay too, but the virus did it, the pandemic. So, things could unravel. So I guess my answer is I don't really see the grand bargain taking place.
Okay. So we take every small incremental improvement as it comes along. Yes.
The good thing is that they are sending, I think China is going to send Han Zheng to the inauguration. That's a word. But the Americans want Chai Chi. Okay? Yeah. So they feel that Chai Chi is closer to power. But what will happen is, if indeed they go, the good news is that I think Han Zheng won't go by himself. He'll go with a delegation. And you can bet the delegation will be meeting Trump people. That's a good sign. They can talk. Yeah.
So thank you, Prof. Chan. So I think we have talked a lot about US, China, and tariffs. I want to move the conversation closer to home, to ASEAN. Right? In all your comments, speeches across the years, you have highlighted a very recurring theme that you have said, that the US should not ask Asian or ASEAN nations to choose sides. I think your recent IPS lectures, you repeated that same theme. Unfortunately, in the current environment, ASEAN nations seems to be positioning each other differently. Right? Philippines, for its defense, is clearly taking one side. Indonesia just joined BRICS last week, so that's a very clear statement itself. I think you get this a lot. How there's a few of these ASEAN questions, I think in essence it is, how does ASEAN stay neutral? How does ASEAN work together for the good of our region, without starting to take sides?
Nobody stays neutral now, but nobody wants to take exclusive sides. I think in this new world, no one wants to make a clear choice. They want to be friends of the US, they want to be friends of China, even Europeans. And I see the group of countries that do not really want to make a choice growing larger and larger. India is the largest of them all. And India, in fact, believes in its own agency. They are in nobody's camp, as Jai Shankar says. And India gave everybody cover. You know, they want to deal with Russia, they'll deal with the US and be friends of the US. As you get more and more countries joining that, you can do it. You see, none of us go to a conference and say, I'm for China, or I'm for America. What do? America says, well, you join this. You sign up, you know. If they say TPP, we all signed up. They give a IPEF, we sign up. China comes with initiatives too, AIIB, BRI, and so on. And China is more faster in producing the initiatives. So we sign. But I think it's very clear, and American strategic thinkers know that with ASEAN countries, even if they say they are with you, one foot is in the other camp too, and they can easily switch. We really want to be friends of both, you know. For instance, I've said to American strategic people, when opposition parties gain power, they will always choose the US because they hope you will, you know, stand behind them and protect them from, you know, possible backlash. But bear in mind, and this is what the Thai said, if PITA comes in, probably change it a bit. Okay. But we will still want to keep the relationship with China warm. So I think that expresses probably the sentiments of everyone. And Indonesia too. He's been to China. Prabowo has been to China twice. But he's been to Japan, he's been to Australia, he's been to the US. So he's really, you know, sort of keeping his options open. Hedging, we're all hedging.
Okay, so that's the operative word. It's not planted. Yeah. All of you, please hedge your financial markets risk. Call your bankers, please.
Yeah. You know, since you are talking about ASEAN, I want to make one point. That ASEAN is this area where we are trying to show that we are an open area, we believe in free trade, we're an open trading region. And we did this with RCEP. We are joining, many countries are joining RCEP. And ASEAN is pushing free trade agreements. I think that's very good. And so long as, and we are WTO, you know, abiding. Now that's a good example. And in this world of protectionism and so on, people will turn around, companies will turn around and say, that's a sane region, you know, and stable region. So it's good for us.
So we don't hear much about WTO nowadays, but you know, regional trade indeed is getting stronger and stronger in ASEAN. The last 5 minutes of our discussion, I think I want to reserve exclusively for Singapore. We have SG60 coming up. I think all of us are looking forward to more CDC vouchers, more skills futures credits. But jokes aside, right? I know you care a lot about Singapore. You sit on quite a few of our boards and societies. Prof. Chan, what's your vision of Singapore in the next decade after SG60?
I am positive and optimistic about Singapore. You know, in some circles it's fashionable to sort of wring your hands and say, what next, what next? But I'm positive about Singapore. If you look at how we have been, over the years, we've weathered so many crises. You know, we've had SARS, we've had the Asian financial crisis, we've gone through the American financial crisis, the big crisis. We've been through the pandemic, and we handled it very well. Different generations of leadership. 4G handled the pandemic, you know. So, and we've tried out new things. I think that Singaporeans are best when they are challenged. We come together and we think fast. How do we turn around, and how do we take advantages of the new winds of change, and what do we do for our economy with that? We're quite nimble at that, and that's our DNA. So I am positive about looking at the future. We will make some mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. But so long as we can pick ourselves up and carry on. So you're talking to somebody who is positive.
Okay, positive. If I can push it a little bit, if I can invoke JFK, right? Ask not what Singapore can do for you, but what you can do for your nation. What's your positive advice to all Singaporeans here in this room, what we can do for Singapore, at our 60th birthday?
I have said this on many campuses when I was an ambassador. I said, you have to find a mission larger than yourselves. I tell young people, and you have to believe in a higher purpose beyond yourself. Help your nation, do things. I tell young people, are you volunteering at the constituency level? What? People are very surprised. Do you want to be a prime minister? Americans grow up and say, I want to be president. No Singaporean says, I want to be prime minister. But we've got to start thinking of public roles and so on. What is my advice for young people in this 60th anniversary? The world is changing, and you must change with it. Now, the time has come when you have to look far more at the region. And we are not better than anybody else because other people are catching up. Other countries, neighboring countries are catching up with us.
Yes.
And your future is to look around the region. Going to the West, we all know, at a drop of a hat, we'll take a plane and go to the West or to Japan, and so on. But go to Southeast Asia, understand the culture, and so on. And in this new world, you have to be people-centric. Someone just told me at SUTD yesterday that there's a big study in America which said that knowledge is relationships. It's relationships. If you have relationships, you will increase knowledge. So it's not just holding your devices and learning from there. You learn from mixing with people like Kun Hao, with other people in the room. You learn from your superiors and even young people, because you can learn from younger people. So it's all about being people-centric. Although it's so much technology, that I would put a lot of emphasis on knowing people and developing your relationships. And for Singapore, what do we have? It's really exercising your network and relationships. Otherwise, it's very hard for us to make a living in this world. Grow your networks, grow your relationships. I guess that's my advice for young people.
So I take this as an open invitation from Prof. Chan. Anybody who would like to serve Singapore, please come up to her. She's here with us the whole morning. Introduce yourself. Give her your contact. Yeah. Last question. This is an academic forum. There will always have to be the obligatory investment question. If I may pose to you, should we give you $1 million, right?
I'll take it. I'll take it.
But there's caveats. What would you invest in? Do you invest in gold? Do you invest in Bitcoin? Do you buy Chinese equities? Or perhaps do you buy more Singapore banking stocks?
I'm not a good person to ask this because, what I do is I buy something, I just lock it up because I don't have time, and I do really blue chip type things. I don't monitor things day by day.
Very blue chip.
Yeah. And the smart people will say, because President Trump is there, you should buy Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Okay? But it takes a lot of, you have to worry, you've got to check. So I will buy gold because I can lock it up and I don't have to worry about it.
So this is not scripted, right? Yes, we have a positive view on gold for $3,000 per ounce. Yeah. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Professor Chan Heng Chee.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kun Hao. Thank you, Prof. Chan. If I could invite you to remain on stage, please. I'd like to invite Fred on stage to present our guest of honor with a token of our appreciation for such a wonderful chat and such great insights to kick us off for the year as well. I love that open invitation to Prof. Chan as well. A warm round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, as we thank Prof. Chan and, of course, Kun Hao for that vibrant conversation this morning. Nice and candid conversation we have too. big smiles all around. Just a couple more photos. And we've got one more too, as I invite a couple more gentlemen up on stage here with us. Fantastic. If you could kindly remain on stage, please. I'd like to invite Mr. Wee Ee Cheong, Deputy Chairman and CEO of UOB, up on stage, please. A warm round of applause, ladies and gents. Also inviting Mr. Kelvin Ng, Head of Group Global Markets, UOB, up on stage, please. Kelvin. Gentlemen. A group photo to remember this moment by. Kun Hao too, if you could join us. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I know a lot of us are taking photos with our phones, but for those of us who aren't taking photos, another round of applause, please. I really enjoyed this chat. What a great start to our Global Markets Economic Forum 2025. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to invite you back to your seats, please. We definitely missed Prof Ko, but of course, a wonderful morning here with Prof Chan present. All right. A great start to the morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are headed to a very short 5-minute break. We look forward to you enjoying more of the breakfast, the tea, and the coffee. When you return, we've got the macroeconomic outlook for the year, followed by a panel discussion, Agility in ASEAN, Resilience Amid Shifting Sands. We'll see you back here in about 5 minutes. Thank you.